cleanup. EPA has admitted to the release of the heavy metal-tainted water, which occurred while its contractors were inspecting the mine. New Mexico Governor Susana Martinez says she expects to be compensated for the cost of any cleanup of the river.
We certainly expect the EPA to pay for every bit of the costs for this catastrophe. They caused it, they pay for it.
Heavy metals from the mine waste remain trapped in the riverbed. Nation's manufacturing firms, including auto plants, clothing firms, and plastic factories, were apparently firing on all cylinders in July. According to the Federal Reserve, U.S. factory production was up 0.8%. On Wall Street today, stocks closed higher. The Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 69 points. The Nasdaq rose 14 points today. You're listening to NPR.
This is WNYC New York. I'm Sean Carlson. City officials say a veteran member of the fire department was shot while responding to a standoff with the police on Staten Island. 53-year-old Fire Lieutenant James Hayes was shot by an ex-convict wanted by the police after entering the apartment where the suspect barricaded himself and set off a smoke bomb. Fire Commissioner Dan Nigro says Hayes started to worry when the suspect stopped speaking to him during the standoff.
Lieutenant Hayes was quite concerned that he had become unconscious in the smoke, the heavy smoke in the apartment, that there were other occupants. He entered the apartment to make a search, at which time he was shot twice.
Hayes is expected to make a full recovery. Officials say 38-year-old Garland Tyree was shot dead by police after he emerged from the apartment with a fully automatic AK-47. Some residents of Trenton are seeking answers after police shot and injured a 14-year-old boy 7 times. Verdaz Hearns is in the hospital in stable condition, but his family says the account of the shooting offered by authorities does not hold water. The state attorney general says the boy was searching for his waistband before he was shot and that a gun was found near the scene some 12 hours later. But Kevin Shea, a reporter with NJ Advanced Media, says some of the frustration with the investigation stems from the fact that the identities of the witnesses or the police officers involved have not been released.
The state attorney general's office is investigating this with what's called their shooting response team when an officer is involved. And they have said they're not going to put out a lot of information because they want to keep this investigation under their guidelines.
New Jersey Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman has called for a federal investigation. Mostly clear skies for the rest of tonight, low around 70 degrees. It's currently 80 and clear in Central Park. This is WNYC at 8:06.
Support for NPR comes from Avalara, tax automation for businesses of all sizes. Avalara's cloud-based technology is designed to simplify business tax by performing real-time tax calculations and enabling automatic return filing. Learn more at avalara.com.
At WNYC, we rely on listener support. But what exactly does that mean?
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Sancada, the program director at WNYC. To me, listener support means you're a partner with us. The news, the information, the types of conversations you hear on WNYC, without your contribution, it doesn't happen. And you know, I like it that way. We are beholden to you. That's what keeps WNYC strong.
Show your support. Go to WNYC.org and click on Donate.
From WNYC in New York, this is On the Media. I'm Brooke Gladstone.
And I'm Bob Garfield. The vulgar spectacle of Donald Trump's presidential run has yielded at least 2 benefits. The first is the refreshing sight of a candidate so rich he needed to prostrate himself before the checkbooks and agendas of Sheldon Adelson and the Koch brothers. The second benefit has accrued specifically to one institution, Fox News Channel.
It is 9 p.m. on the East Coast, and the moment of truth has arrived.
With 24 million viewers, last week's Republican primary debate was the most watched program in Fox history. Not only does Trump have a sort of demolition derby appeal, you know there'll be wreckage. His brand of bellicose bigotry happens to overlap with Fox's overwhelmingly aging, angry white audience. But Trump is a double-edged swordsman. Just one night after the debate, during which Fox's moderators peppered him with tough questions, Trump called in to CNN Tonight and complained to host Don Lemon.
I'm here in front of all these people. I'm doing Fox a favor by doing this show. And then they, come out with these vicious questions. I'm disappointed in Fox News. I think they probably had an agenda, but certainly I don't have a lot of respect for Megyn Kelly. You could see there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever.
By leaning in on Trump, debate moderator Kelly turned Trump's blade against Fox. And according to New York Magazine National Affairs editor Gabriel Sherman, Fox News chief Roger Ailes faced a grave choice.
They were desperately trying to make a political calculation of whether they staunchly back their star anchor or appeal to the angry audience that Trump seems to be, building a political coalition out of that just happens to dovetail with Fox viewers. And we saw in the end the value of the audience exceeded the value of protecting and defending Megyn Kelly.
They did try to head off the possibility of some sort of anti-Fox sentiment in the arena with the first question that Brett Baer asked all of the candidates.
Is there anyone on stage, and can I see hands, who is unwilling tonight to pledge your support to the eventual nominee of the Republican Party and pledge to not run an independent campaign against that person? Again, we're looking for you to raise your hand now if you won't make that pledge tonight. Mr. Trump.
The moment Trump's hand shot up, the entire audience started booing him. And these are, Republican faithful, the people who turn out to watch primary debates live. And this was treason to them. The arena was electric, but the strategy backfired because inside the Trump campaign, that first question was viewed as a political hit, calculated to turn the party against him. And that is what fueled his anti-Fox News crusade over the past week. It wasn't just Kelly's comments about women. It was that first question as well. And so Roger Ailes may have scored kind of a tactical victory in the debate by getting the moderators to ask that question. But the strategic failure was that it turned Trump against Fox.
So what did Ailes have to do to appease the Donald and the extremists in his own audience?
Well, it was a process that took days. I mean, Ailes was reluctant to get on the phone with Trump. There was a fear that Trump was so unpredictable that he might leak the conversation or somehow damage Fox News by publicizing it in some way.
And it wasn't a baseless concern because Trump had revealed the private cell phone number of Lindsey Graham at a campaign event.
Yes, so it was left to others. Sean Hannity had a conversation with Donald Trump over that weekend in which Trump declared that he was going to boycott Fox. And on Monday, Ailes decided to finally pick up the phone and call Trump. And he offered Trump a 1-hour special with Megyn Kelly to clear the air. But Trump threw that offer out the window. And so Ailes frantically offered Fox and Friends, a venue that has been especially friendly to Trump's campaign, and Hannity as well. Trump, in the end, agreed after exacting concessions from Ailes in which he guaranteed him that Fox would cover him, quote, fairly. Now, the best part of this exchange is that Roger Ailes then called Trump several other times that morning and asked him to tweet out to his millions of followers that all was okay between his campaign and the network. That shows you the desperation Ailes felt to smooth things over with Trump's audience.
This raises the question of what constituted the supposed unfairness. What Megyn Kelly did was ask Trump to account for his nakedly misogynist statements.
You call women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. You once told a contestant on Celebrity Apprentice it would be a pretty picture to see her on her knees. Does that sound to you like the temperament of a man we should elect as president? And how will you answer the charge from Hillary Clinton, who is likely to be the Democratic nominee, that you are part of the war on women?
Honestly, Megyn, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. I've been very nice to you, although I could probably maybe not be based on the way you have treated me, but I wouldn't do that.
It's a perfectly reasonable journalistic path to explore, but
fairness is in the eye of the beholder. And as anyone who watches Fox News knows, the network is built on being the voice of a segment of the population that feels the culture is out to get them. And the fact that Megyn Kelly seemed to be siding with that other side of the culture was too much for the audience to bear.
What if Donald Trump does make good his threat to run as a third party? Fox News has become the institution it is by being the de facto house organ of the right wing and the Republican Party. Does this mean he will throw the Republicans under the bus in order to focus on a Trump third-party run for the president?
Well, I think that would be the biggest test that Roger Ailes will face as a chairman and CEO of the network. It would force him to choose between his angry, loyal audience and a broader Republican electorate that will be turned off by a Trump candidacy. Now, my gut tells me that there is no way he would abandon the Republican Party to back a Trump third-party run. Roger Ailes is a creature of the Republican Party. He's been involved in Republican politics since 1968. But I think it's going to be a test because his audience is much further to the right than Jeb Bush or any of the other candidates that eventually will win the nomination.
And you just said will win the nomination. My questions assumed precisely the same thing, but maybe we're missing something that Roger Ailes may himself know. As someone who has written a book about Ailes and who has, like everyone else, been in full Trump immersion for the last number of weeks, do you think the outcome here could be unexpected?
I've been loath to make any predictions when it comes to Donald Trump. I think that's what makes him both so powerful and so unpredictable. I sort of make this comparison to Sarah Palin. You know, Sarah Palin was the kind of right-wing phenomenon, and yet Sarah Palin's star faded because at the end of the day she was dependent upon larger, more powerful interests to keep her relevant. Donald Trump is not dependent on anyone. He can get on his jet, fly around the country, give speeches. If we learned anything this last week, Fox News is more dependent on Donald Trump at this point than Donald Trump needs Fox News.
Gabriel, thanks so much.
Good to be with you.
Gabriel Sherman is National Affairs Editor at New York Magazine and also the author of The Loudest Voice in the Room, How the Brilliant, Bombastic Roger Ailes Built Fox News and Divided a Country.
You know, talking about a lot of leverage. We want to win, and we will win.
Meanwhile, on the left, Harvard Law professor Lawrence Lessig wants to be president. Sort of. We spoke with him last summer about his effort to neutralize super PACs with his own that backed congressional candidates who support campaign finance reform. That effort, the May Day super PAC, didn't go so well. But now Lessig has a new strategy for leveling the political playing field. If he can crowdfund $1 million by Labor Day, he'll run for president on a platform of election reform. And if he wins, as if, he'll serve only until Congress legislates fairness into our democratic process with passage of the Citizen Equality Act of 2017. Then he'll resign, leaving his vice president, maybe Bernie Sanders, maybe Elizabeth Warren, in the White House. As of Thursday evening, when we're recording this, Lessig has raised nearly 20% of his goal from donors. Lawrence Lessig, welcome back to On the Media.
It's great to be back.
So this is a media show, and campaign finance is very much a media issue because most of the money is spent on TV ads. But we're also a media show, and we understand media manipulation. By having you here, we have been sucked into the vortex of your publicity strategy. You are not going to be president of the United States. What is this all about?
As Elizabeth Warren puts it, the system is rigged. And so what I'm trying to do is to run a campaign to focus attention on the thing we all already recognize, that we have to fix the rigged system if we're to have any hope of having a democracy that represents us again.
Lay out, please, the provisions of the Citizens Equality Act of 2017.
Number one, we would have equal freedom to vote. Strategies that are used to suppress the vote would be no longer permitted. Number two, we would have equal representation, changing the way districts are drawn and rules for electing members of Congress so that we would have the chance for as many people as possible to be effectively represented in Congress. And number three, the part that's most important to me, is to change the way we fund elections so we don't have this perverse system for electing candidates to Congress. You know, in the South, they used to have the white primary. Only whites were allowed to vote in the Democratic primary. We don't have a white primary anymore. We have a green primary. And it trades on a fundamental insight of one of the most important political philosophers in the history of political philosophy, Boss Tweed, head of Tammany Hall, who used to say, I don't care who does the electing as long as I get to do the nominating. Because what Tweed knew is that if he got to nominate the candidates, they would always worry what he thought. And that's the system we've produced with money.
Let's just pretend that you actually had a chance of pulling this off. Let's just pretend. Once you do get elected on your one-issue platform, you do what?
Well, I'm going to fight the assumption we're pretending. Obviously, I get incredible implausibility of what I'm talking about happening. But what I've described is a series of steps. If the first step establishes a large number of people supporting the idea, I can run and get the kind of attention that makes it plausible that I could be in the debates. Practically every single question that will be asked on that debate stage is tied fundamentally to the corrupted inequality of this political system. I don't think it's crazy to imagine that Democrats react as viscerally and passionately to this point as Republicans are reacting when Donald Trump makes the same point.
I give to everybody. When they call, I give. And you know what? When I need something from them, 2 years later, 3 years later, I call them. They are there for me. And that's a broken system.
He got the attention of a predominantly right-wing audience.
One could, be a little bit surprised that it takes Donald Trump to say it for us to believe it, but okay, I'll take belief however we can get it. Now, this is not just rhetoric, right? We have extraordinary amounts of actual empirical political science to back this up, like a really incredible study. It's a Princeton study, so as a Harvard professor, I'm not supposed to mention it, but here it is. What they found was, over a 30-year period, while the views of the economic elite were strongly related to what our government actually did, for the average voter, the relationship was literally, on the graph, a flat line. What that means is there is no statistical correlation between what the average voters want and what our government does, independent of what the rich might happen to want or what organized interest groups might happen to want. And we have got to finally find a way to take it on and do something about it.
This is not your first quixotic tilt at political equity. In the introduction, we referred to your May Day Super PAC, which you formed last spring in order to help elect legislators who would serve the interests of the people as opposed to big money. Your Super PAC invested in 8 races. You lost 6 of them, and 2 were regarded as easy wins. Why do you think that the Lessig for President campaign is going to be more available?
Now, it's not true to say that the 2 races were simple races. One we were confident of, but the other was a very important victory in a Democratic primary for a candidate who took this issue up. I'm doing 2 things that respond precisely to what we saw from the May Day experiment last year. Number 1, we are fighting this in the primary, where nobody's worried about whether their side's going to ultimately win. They're just deciding what are the values of their party. And I think the values of the Democratic Party should embrace the idea of equal citizenship. Number 2, one important lesson we learned in the May Day Project was that people are extremely skeptical that there's anything that can be done.
In June, a Wall Street Journal NBC poll found that 1/3 of Americans say the top concern in the presidential election is the influence of big money. On the other hand, the electorate is not frothing at the mouth over campaign finance reform unless asked by pollsters.
Indeed, there was a poll done by the Claris Group that found that 80% of Americans think every reform ever passed was a reform to benefit the incumbents. We are so cynical, so skeptical of efforts to reform the system that we don't even listen to it anymore. That's the politics of resignation. And that's exactly what I think we see observed in campaigns that try to raise this issue. Now, if we had a referendum on this question, we'd win easily. The problem is we don't have a referendum at the federal level. So what I'm saying is here's a strategy like a referendum that if we could convince people that, this is plausible, they might begin to thaw their resignation and say, okay, let's give this a try, because this, in fact, could give me what I want, a government that is no longer corrupted.
One final question. Do you have a slogan?
Sure. Equal citizens first.
No. Listen, my friend, you're a law professor. I've got a very, very rich history in advertising. That's not your slogan. Ready?
Please, give me my slogan. Do I have to pay for this?
Well, you have to deal with the Mies van der Rohe estate.
Okay.
The slogan is, Lessig's more.
I've seen that slogan.
Larry, thanks so much.
Thank you.